Hey guys, welcome to another Friday video. So today we're working with a Slot 1 retro system. This is a donation from a couple of years ago and I've got two systems, and yeah, the state in which the system arrived is pretty bad. So these computer parts, they must have been stored in some sort of a shed, and sand in Australia is red because it's rich with iron ore. So yeah, we will have to wash these parts. They are too dusty. You can use a brush and take your time and remove the dirt, but in such extreme cases I'll just put it under the sink and then let it out to dry for 2 days or so. We have 40+ degrees days here, so they dry nicely. So a Slot 1 machine is fantastic for retro gaming. You can run MS-DOS, Windows 98, 2000 and also XP with a very wide range of processors and graphics cards. It is also compatible with 3DFX Voodoo cards, and usually you get the legendary Intel 440BX chipset, which is rock solid and everything just works. So the cleaning process worked fine. Unfortunately, out of the two main boards that I received, only one is working. So that's what we're gonna work with today. So now let's have a closer look at the parts. And some parts are missing. For example, there was no video card. I can't remember if I removed it a few years ago. It might have been something like a TNT or a River TNT 2 M64, something like that. Either way, I can't recall what it came with, so we're going with a 3DFX Voodoo 3 card to better showcase what this machine can do. So let's take a closer look at the main board. This is a typical configuration for a slot motherboard. Here goes the processor. We have 3 RAM slots, AGP, we got 4 PCI slots and 2 ISA slots. So for DOS this is awesome. You can use some old school ISA sound cards. There's an integrated PC speaker over here. We're getting 2 IDE ports for hard drives. Here goes the floppy port and here goes the power supply. And the chipset is indeed the 440BX, so that's excellent compatibility. This is a mainboard from Intel. The BIOS is fairly basic, so there's no overclocking, but we get all the usual options to make this a fairly usable system. At the back we've got the usual ports, PS2 for keyboard and mouse. We're getting 2 USB ports, 2 serial ports and also a parallel printer port. A nice little surprise is this header here. This is a Sound Blaster PCI port. It gives you better compatibility with certain PCI sound cards. You need to connect a ribbon cable. This might be a topic for a future video, but all you need to know is that certain PCI sound cards together with this header here can end up having a compatibility that is as good as a ISA sound card. The machine came with a PCI modem, so unfortunately this is something I can't test anymore. We don't have, at least in this home, we don't have landlines anymore. This house is connected to the NBN, the National Broadband Network, so yeah, no dial-up tone. If you connect your phone line here, it goes straight to the nearest NBN box. But yeah, nice blast from the past. That's how we went online back in the day. Has a speaker on here so you could hear the dial tone, and there are also 2 audio ports to connect a microphone and a speaker. The machine came with a sound card, and this is nothing other than the Ensoniq Audio PCI. Really interesting history. So Ensoniq used to make really large sound cards, extremely long with lots of components and high quality, but later in their company life they started to go after value, and this is a highly integrated sound card, and most of the processing is done in software, so the main CPU has to take over. And yeah, Creative bought them out, and the Audio PCI ended up as various Creative sound cards like the Sound Blaster PCI 64 or 128. And yeah, unfortunately in this project I had lots of issues. I just couldn't get the drivers to install. Yeah, that was a bit disappointing. I wanted to use this sound card, but that's just how it goes when you produce content and having to do a video every week. You just have to move on. You don't have too much time to diagnose. So I switched over to the good old Oriole Vortex 2. That card pretty much always just works for me. So we're gonna use this sound card in the game captures, and this lets us use the awesome A3D API, which a lot of the Windows 98 games support out of the box. And here we have the processor. So this is indeed a Intel Pentium II, so that's a good start, very good for retro gaming. And when I saw the model number, I was really happy. So this is the 450 megahertz model. This is basically the final and fastest Pentium II, so that means it's also worth a little bit. In general, with retro PC gaming and parts, the final part of an era always demands a premium. You can often get the second or third fastest part for likely half the price. So that's really nice. I already have a 450 megahertz Pentium II. Now I've got a second one, so that is really nice. For graphics, we're using a 3DFX Voodoo 3. This is the compact edition, which is basically a Voodoo 3 3500, but has a dedicated VGA output, so you don't need that awkward dongle cable that the regular 3500 comes with. This is for AGP, and 3DFX Voodoo is a good choice for Pentium II. The Pentium II is not the fastest processor, and the Voodoo cards work really well with computers where the processor is not that strong. The Glide API has very little overhead, and yeah, you will see that most of the games we're playing today, they're running actually really well on this machine. For RAM, nothing crazy. We're using regular SD RAM, rated at 133 megahertz, but the frontside bus on the slot 1 machine is 100 megahertz, so it will just downclock. Rated at CL2, and we're using 256 megabytes of RAM. That's plenty for Windows 98 and all the games that we're trying today. And we need some storage, so we're using a 80 gigabyte hard drive from Samsung. This one has the old school IDE interface, and there usually is a little jumper block like that. So have a look on the sticker, you can see it here. There's a little diagram with the jumper configurations. For example, one interesting one is if you want to limit the capacity to 32 gigabytes, if your BIOS is not that modern, I'll just use the default configuration and connected it to the primary IDE channel as a master device, and yep, that worked just fine for this project. Let's have a look at some benchmarks to see what this machine can do. In 3D Mark 99, we're getting 3,312 3D marks with 4,349 CPU marks. We also tested GL Quake at 1024x768, 16-bit colors, because the Voodoo 3 can't render in 32 bits. So in GL Quake, we're getting 96.2 FPS. In Quake 2, also 1024x768 with 16-bit colors, we're getting 79.4 FPS. And then I tried Expendable. This game is a little bit more demanding, requires a faster CPU. At 1024x768 with 16-bit colors, we're getting 46.6 FPS. In regards to the software, installing Windows 98 was pretty straightforward. After that, I installed the Intel chipset drivers. I had some issues with the sound card, but the Oriel Vortex 2, that worked just fine. I'm using the latest 3DFX Voodoo reference drivers. Sometimes with the Voodoo cards, if you run into the issue where you can't select the proper resolution, on my machine it topped out at 800 by 600, you have to manually install a monitor driver. Just pick some random monitors. I believe I picked some Sony monitor, and then all the higher resolutions started to work. That's a known bug between some monitors and the 3DFX Voodoo cards. And after that I installed DirectX 7 and we're ready to go. And now let's have a look at some games. First up, we have Half-Life. For this, I upgraded the 3DFX Mini GL driver, and yeah, the game runs great. So this is a 1024x768, and nice to see that the Pentium II is fast enough to handle this game if you pair it up with a suitable video card. Incoming, what a classic game. This game is more the show of 32-bit colors. It's very colorful and it uses a lot of transparency effects and little particles and things like that. So not the best card to showcase the Voodoo 3 with, but it does run well, and at 1024x768, even with the 16-bit color mode, it still looks fairly good. The Voodoo 3 has an output filter. People call it like a 22-bit equivalent. So you don't get as bad as dithering like on a GeForce running in 16-bit colors, but you also don't get quite the same quality as if you had a GeForce with 32-bit colors. Interesting, if you're using an NVIDIA card and you want to play incoming, on video cards after the TNT 2, the game will render incorrectly. They just change something how they render colors, something like that. I also tested the Final Fantasy VII demo because this is a nice little test to see if your system supports 8-bit paletted textures, and this system does. What does that mean? It just means a few exotic or specific games will render correctly on this system. If you have a 3DFX Voodoo card, you must try Unreal with the glide option. This is actually the GOG version. You install it on a modern machine, copy the folder across, delete the nglide files, and off you go. You've got a installation that's working. So we're running at 1024x768. I have enabled the time demo FPS counter, so you can see a few of the stats. Most of the time it does run around the 60 FPS, but it will dip below. Still, very playable experience. Another game that you can pick up from GOG that runs on Windows 98 is Rune Gold. Now you gotta be careful. The default installation from GOG does not run on Windows 98, but under the extras there's a download option to get the classic version, and that works. Once again, you have to remove the nglide files if you want to run it under Windows 98, and then it will pick up that you have a Voodoo card and you can choose the glide option. 1024x768. I don't know what the FPS is with glide. There is no FPS counter. You can't use tools like Fraps, unfortunately, but it seems to be running at a speed appropriate to a retro gaming PC. Draken is next. This seems to be a fun role-playing game with a good story. Never managed to get very far. Like many old games, they are quite challenging, at least to me when you're used to checkpoints and easy modes and all of that. But yeah, nice graphics and definitely a game worth checking out. So 1024x768, and once again, seems to be running just fine. This game is another game that supports the A3D audio option, so if you're playing with headphones, it sounds really nice. Clive Barker's Undying. This is also the GOG version, I believe. Same deal, you have to strip out the nglide files, but then it works just fine. And yeah, the game looks very crisp. All these glide games, they've got this unique voodoo look to them. And yeah, it's just something I really love checking out every time I build a Windows 98 PC. And the other benefit of using a Voodoo card is that the games, the demos you download, they just work. In that era, yes, there was NVIDIA and ATI, but 3DFX was really the market leader, and everyone that made a game made sure that the games worked on a Voodoo card. And yeah, that's really nice now if you're building a machine and you're downloading period correct demos that might not have latest patches and updates for later GeForce cards, and everything just works. It's a really pleasurable experience. So guys, if you have an opportunity to pick up a slot 1 machine, don't hesitate, just grab it. The value of these will just increase in price. And in terms of versatility, the slot 1 is fantastic. From DOS to Windows 98 is probably where I see it mostly used, but you can also try Windows 2000 and Windows XP if you want. Linux, of course, works just as well. And yeah, with the cleaning, unfortunately one motherboard didn't work. I doubt it was the cleaning process. People freak out with water and electrical components, but the parts are not switched on, so there's no electricity that can actually short circuit. Just be sure that you let it dry properly. In Australia, in December, this is really easy. We have 40+ degrees days, and I just spread out some paper towels on the floor, place the parts on top, and after 2 days, they are nice and dry. I was a bit surprised with the issues getting the audio PCI going. That's unusual. In the past, I never really had any issues, so this might be an issue to do with this particular mainboard. Although the sound card came with this bundle, so yeah, a little bit surprised. And I did try different PCI slots. There's a possibility that I used the wrong driver initially and that stuffed up something in the Windows 98 installation. Sometimes it can, Windows 98 systems can be quite picky in that regard, but luckily I have access to a ton of different parts, so we just went with the Orbital Vortex 2, and that worked just fine. matching up a slot 1 machine with a Voodoo card is a good choice. The AGP slot is compatible with the voltage that the Voodoo requires, and the Voodoo, especially if you're running Glide games with a low CPU overhead, is a good match for Pentium II, where if you use a GeForce or a Radeon card, the driver overhead is a lot higher and you're not gonna get quite the performance. Also, games from that era usually support the Glide API out of the box, and yeah, that's definitely a highlight to experience. Unfortunately, when NVIDIA bought out 3DFX, they didn't care about Glide. They basically killed everything, which is a shame. It would be really nice if a GeForce 2 had native Glide support. That would have been nice, but yeah, unfortunately, that's not how things turned out. And that's also part of the reason why retro collectors and retro gamers love these Voodoo cards so much. We didn't cover much with DOS in this video because the Pentium II 450, it will run any DOS game perfectly fine. The issue is more to do with the speed. Some games, Pentium II is just too fast. You can disable the caches in the BIOS or through software, and then some of the old games do become playable. For a pure DOS machine, you're still better off with a Pentium MMX, because that CPU can be configured to run DOS games at the correct speed. With the Pentium II or with slot 1 processors in general, you're either getting very fast speed or it's extremely slow with nothing in between. But yeah, if you want to play some of the later DOS games that are not speed sensitive or games using higher resolutions, then slot 1 is a fantastic platform for DOS, especially because you still get ISA slots as well. And there you have it, guys. So this was a donation to the channel, and yeah, this dusty system has been lying around for a couple of years actually, and I only now got around to doing this video, so I gave it a bit of a clean, and most of the parts ended up working. Just one motherboard didn't, which is a bit of a shame, because slot 1 motherboards are definitely worth keeping and hanging on to. And yeah, although this is a Intel OEM mainboard, it does everything you want apart from overclocking. I'm not too much into overclocking retro parts anyway, so that wasn't a big issue for me. And as always, guys, let me know what you think of this project. Leave the comments down below. I read every single one of them. Give it a like, share the video with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I shall see you soon with another one.